warm welcome to our viewers. Today's topic is hot potato, charismatic music. This is the second part of a series. And now we will continue with point number 3. What does neuroscience have to say on music? At this point, I would like to recommend to you a very interesting series. It's called The Distraction Dilemma by Christian Berdahl, Shepherd's Call Ministries. And dear parents, please watch this series together with your children. A very important question is, how does Satan gain access to our brains through charismatic music? Medical Ministries, page 111, tells us, for thousands of years, Satan has been experimenting upon the properties of the human mind. And he has learned to know it well. By his subtle workings in these last days, he is linking the human mind with his own, imbuing it with his thoughts. And he is doing this work in so deceptive a manner that those who accept his guidance know not that they are being led by him at his will. The great deceiver hopes so to confuse the minds of men and women that none but his voice will be heard. Satan's goal is to attack our brain. In fact, he wants to attack our frontal lobe, which is right here. And this frontal lobe is very important, as you can see here on this screen. It is our spiritual control center. It is very important for self-control. The end-time believers, the 144,000, they will receive a future sealing on their forehead. And this is exactly the area where the frontal lobe is located. We can see this in Revelation chapter 7, verse 1, the end-time sealing. Next, you could say, well, you can claim many things, but please prove all this, that this is true. Well, in neurology, there is a diagnostic method which is called electroencephalography, EEG. And why is this so important? Well, if we conduct this method, we take a patient, as seen here on the screen. We place electrodes on the skull, and then we conduct this method in order to receive a brainwave recording, as you can see on the left hand of the screen. And in this brainwave recording, you can see different waves. We have the beta waves, which correspond to the beta rhythm. And this beta rhythm is seen in a state of full consciousness. Whereas the alpha waves correspond to the alpha rhythm. And the alpha rhythm is seen at an early stage of sleep. And of course we know Satan wants to manipulate people, and he uses charismatic music with drums in order to achieve this. Drum music can potentially cause a state of ecstasy, but also trance-like states. And the first thing which happens is when we play drums, then this beta rhythm is converted to an alpha rhythm. And now our frontal lobe is deactivated. Satan knows this is his opportunity now, and he docks right here in the area of our frontal lobe, and he can now infiltrate our brain with false impulses and false contents. And the first destination of this journey is our limbic system, the system of emotion in our brain. The next stop is the deep brain regions, and finally these false contents arrive in our subconscious. And after some time, these false contents are loaded from the subconscious to our consciousness. And friends, we have been manipulated without even noticing it. And this is a very clever manipulation. And friends, I have to tell you, music is not just something trivial. No, music is a weapon for good or evil. And of course, all these musical influences which flow into our brain permanently stay inside our brain. Now, I would like to focus on scientific quotes. At this point, a big thank you to Christian Berdahl, Shepherd's Call Ministry, for the valuable contributions. Dr. Skubik tells us that it is a very big problem to have pounding low frequencies, bass frequencies. These work like a brain drain. Rock, hip-hop, and pop music falls into this category. What happens in our body through charismatic music? Well, if we play this music with drums, then we can see a release of sex hormones, stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline, as well as opioids. Opioids are morphine-like substances which have an addictive potential. Now we could say, okay, then we will just play the music without drums. Then the problem is resolved, isn't it? Well, not quite. If we play this music without drums, then we can see a massive flooding of hormones. We can describe this as a roller coaster experience. We start the roller coaster. Let's say we turn on music, Hillsong's music, for example. The roller coaster starts, it goes up, the level of hormones increases, it goes up, it increases more, it goes up, increases more and more, and then suddenly we reach the top of the roller coaster. And then the music is turned off, or it stops for some reason, and all of a sudden the roller coaster goes down in a very powerful manner. I myself experienced this when I listened to Hillsong's music. I listened to this music. Suddenly it stopped. And then I felt like, oh, I need more of this music. And then I needed to turn it on again. I listened to it, then it stopped. And suddenly I felt, oh, I have to listen to more of this music. And I turned it on again. And this, dear friends, is kind of like an addiction. And this is very problematic. And let me make something very clear. The problem is not that there are hormones such as dopamine and opioids, which are released even when we play this music without drums. But the big problem is the problem of addiction, as well as the hormonal extremes. And of course, this raises the question, do we really want this in worship, dear friends? Professor McLuhan says, the medium is the message. That is to say, the music, its melody, harmony and rhythm, all by itself disposes man to virtue or vice, by moving the emotions. Next, the enjoyment of music. It says that rhythm is very closely connected to body movement, the fleshly carnal element. Dr. Bellum has to tell us, the human mind shuts down after 3 or 4 repetitions of a rhythm or a melody or a harmonic progression. Furthermore, excessive repetition causes people to release control of their thoughts. And now listen carefully. Rhythmic repetition is used by people, and now listen, who are trying to push certain ethics in their music. The problem here is not that we are talking about the use of some repetitions. The big problem are these many excessive repetitions. And for example, there is the song, "Open the Eyes of My Heart, Lord." And in this song, the word holy is mentioned 84 times, dear friends. And of course, based on what we've studied so far, it is very logical that after some time, our frontal lobe is deactivated and we become an easy prey for Satan. And even Jesus himself warns in the Sermon on the Mount, he tells us that we are not supposed to use vain repetitions in our worship, according to Matthew chapter 6, verse 7. What do secular musicians have to say on this issue? Jimi Hendrix. You can hypnotize people with music. And when you get them at their weakest point, you can preach into their subconscious what we want to say. This is incredible. Yeah, this music is manipulative. Of course, Jimi Hendrix is one of the tough guys. But how about modern Christian music? Don't get me wrong, there is beautiful modern music out there. For instance, the music of the Neblet family. But how about this special type of modern music, which is called CCM? This stands for Contemporary Christian Music. This type of music, CCM, is very closely linked to the charismatic music. And the question is the CCM any different than what Jimi Hendrix says? What do charismatics themselves have to say on this topic? Sandy Petty tells us, but a lot of artists are taking that very powerful tool and putting negative, horrible lyrics to it, and those lyrics are getting into the hearts of the listeners and are shaping their values. Okay, shaping of values. It goes on. Why can't we, that is, contemporary Christian musicians, take that same powerful force, music, put positive lyrics to it, and begin shaping values that way? Of course, this poses the question, is there an agenda behind the CCM? Time magazine writes, the CCM performers are indistinguishable except for their lyrics from their secular counterparts. And of course, this quote raises some questions. The first one, is CCM a wolf in sheep's clothing? Second, is CCM just 100% acting? In other words, the CCM performers get onto the stage, the show starts, they just put on a Christian garb, that is Christian lyrics, they start singing, but the rest is everything 100% secular difference. And what's also very interesting is that the occult backwards messages, the so-called backward message, is also contained in the songs of the CCM. Now I would like to share my personal testimony with you. In my youth, I used to be involved in a lot of charismatic music despite my Adventist background. To make a long story short, the big problem is, if you are involved in charismatic music, you yourself will not even realize that there is a big problem with your music experience. Only if you get a distance from this music, then you will get this before, after perspective, and you will truly realize what really happened. Additionally, there is another big challenge, and this big challenge are false teachings. It can happen that during the consumption of charismatic music, false teachings can appear. And it can happen that you realize for a second that there is something wrong, that there are false teachings. But this impression lasts just for a moment. And the next moment, this same impression is completely suppressed by this charismatic music. And your next impression is, oh, wow, everything is okay again because of this music. And this, dear friends, is a very dangerous strategy. This is very problematic. And only God can liberate us from this very difficult situation. In my case, the last step of liberation from this music was the complete removal of all charismatic material. And only then I was able to experience the promise of John chapter 8, verse 36. It says, "If the Son therefore shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed." And now I would like to make two appeals. The second appeal is to all Adventist adults. Watch your children very carefully. Study the topic of music with them. set an example to them for right music. Why am I telling you this? My experience is, what happened in my country was that at some point, at some Adventist events, there was a separation of children from their Adventist parents. And it was the same event. And the children were led to one hall and the adults to another hall in the same building. The adults listened to Adventist music, whereas the children were presented to charismatic music. And this is a big problem. And now my appeal to all viewers. Please reconsider charismatic music. In case you are involved in this music, separate yourself completely from it. Friends, it can happen very easily that we get into this false music. God overlooks this time of ignorance. But now I would like to encourage you to completely surrender your life to Jesus Christ, even in the musical area. Just have courage. Additionally, there are also other testimonies. For instance, the testimony of Marco College, which you can see here on this slide. The second part of this series is now over. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.